covering the islands of the Bahamas. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
How are election campaigns financed? This question raised by international observers. Good evening, I'm Opal Rhodes sitting in for Keishla Adley, and this is The Bahamas Tonight. Topping news, campaign finance reform. Where does the money come from? Well, the country's leader addressing this issue after independent monitors drew attention to it in a report following the election. Janae Noel Ferguson has more.
Is the country ready for campaign finance reform? This was the question put to parliamentarians by Prime Minister Perry Christie during a training workshop at the British Colonial Hilton Thursday. Finance reform was one of the recommendations made by the international observers who monitored the recent May 7th general elections.
We are living a lie to just continue to allow this current system that we're operating under to exist, because you know and I know and everyone else knows a lot of things are happening in this current system where you're taking advantage of all sorts of opportunities if you're the government, and it places people at a significant disadvantage, and that's not how a democracy functions.
Now, Mr. Christie anticipates a significant amount of public opinion on the matter, and he hopes to create a new culture when it comes to how elections are financed, in agreement with the opposition.
Anyone could give monies, and you don't have to account for what is given. You don't have to name the people who gave it to you. What I said to the opposition, that both sides would know of those foreign contributors who, above the board, make a donation politically. So I know, and they would say, okay, I'm going to give 100,000 to the PLP, I'll give 100,000 to the FNM, I'll give 100,000 to the DNA, if that's the question. But we know that. And the question is, have we reached a point, which I think we have, where when it comes to good governance, the people of the country, or most certainly an independent commission of the country, ought to know that the decisions you are about to make as a government could have been influenced or could be influenced by the fact that this one gave you $1 million. You shouldn't do things to induce people to vote for you in an election. And very clearly, you can just list countless examples where the law is breached, but almost like when I'm in power, I do it, and when you're in power, you do it.
But will the government once and for all address campaign finance reform? Mr. Christie says the issue is already on the table.
We have to examine all of the practices of how money is used and how people come to you asking you for money during the course of the election. That's why I use the word repugnant. It is harmful to the democracy to be caught in situations like that. And that is why the observers recommended that we change. Show that you can have above the table accounting regulations for campaign contributions. Show that you can have an independent constituencies commission.
Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS News.
Well, new parliamentarians learning more about the parliamentary system today as they attended a seminar at the Hilton Resort. House Speaker Dr. Kendall Major organized a workshop to ensure that all members were in tune with the rules and procedures. Dr. Major also talked about improvements in the pipeline for the Parliament complex.
The House of Assembly ought to be an independent body. Can I hear an amen? We ought to separate the staff of the Parliament from the Public Service Commission and establish under a parliamentary commission, which will be headed by parliamentarians. Example, the Speaker, President of the Senate, Minister of Finance, and other members of Parliament. Fourthly, we ought to overhaul and upgrade the Hansard recording devices and change to digital and real-time stenographers. I know y'all gonna agree with that.
While also addressing the group today was opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis. He noted the importance of the opposition's role in Parliament.
It is also important for the government to fulfill its role of ensuring the opposition is adequately equipped to have a strong, stable democracy. The opposition has to fulfill a key role of scrutinizing the legislative and budgetary proposals of the government with vigor and quality debates. We have to ensure transparency in the political process while fighting for accountability and legitimacy. An effective opposition promotes and ensures legislative excellence in the process. The opposition has a critical role that does not permit a bill or legislation to become law without proper discussion.
Now, yesterday we told you that government could bring a referendum on women's rights. The people will be given an opportunity once again to say yay or nay after giving a thumbs down 10 years ago. Janae Noel Ferguson talked to the Prime Minister about this.
The government plans to hold a referendum for constitutional changes to eliminate discrimination against women, a matter that Prime Minister Perry Christie, while in opposition in February 2002, objected to. The vote was also rejected by the people. Today, Mr. Christie said there was a specific reason for that.
We opposed last time on a specific ground. I went to the Seventh-day Adventist annual gathering, and I remember Janet Boswick was on one side and I was on the other on the aisle sitting down, and I remember the then leader of the Seventh-day Adventists saying they weren't consulted, and that because they weren't consulted they couldn't participate. I then checked and found out that all of the churches were saying they weren't consulted, and I then went to my colleagues and said, for the purposes of lack of consultation, we must oppose this unless Ingram decides to stop it and consult. And he didn't. And that is how we got to do it. It was not about, we didn't make decisions on the merit of the case. What we're saying now is that we're going to put it, and we're going to put it to the Bahamian people, because it is not just a question of what we think, it's a question of what the world thinks.
When asked by the media if he feels the party's opposition in 2002 will affect the outcome of the pending referendum, this is what Mr. Christie had to say.
The PLP's opposition to the referendum was that you should never, since, as I said before, it was not a question of a judgment as to the substance of it, it was a judgment as to the process. And we attacked the process, and we were successful in attacking the process. Now, the byproduct of it is you say that it wasn't passed. Yes, it wasn't passed. But we were never motivated against any issue on the referendum. We were motivated against the fact that it was being imposed upon people against their will.
Nevertheless, Mr. Christie says the Bahamian people will have another opportunity to decide.
The Bahamas, it's an issue where the United Nations, for example, and other entities will raise concern about, your policies and your laws, and so what we will do is that we will respond to the positive feelings in the country that this is an issue that should go to the people.
Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS News.
Well, Prime Minister Christie also telling parliamentarians today that he will have an opportunity to speak about Mr. Ingram's contribution to public service, but he explained why he hasn't yet made any comments.
We have a by-election coming up. By the very definition of party politics, over the course of the next period of time, between now and the event itself, all of us will be partisan. Each of us will be partisan. It's a hell of a development to have me speaking the truth as to what he did and contributed, and having that interpreted by Mr. Minnis in Abaco, saying even Christie said so. That is why That is why resignations must be certain. Retirements must be certain, because it only will cause things that are said in absolute truth and conviction to be colored by the events that are yet to transpire. So clearly it would be appropriate for me to provide any salutations that I will provide at a time when it is appropriate to history.
Well, BTC has apparently doubled its financial returns to the government since privatization. That from the country's chief today as he addressed Rotarians. As Betty Thompson-Moss tells us, the company has also reduced its operating cost.
Cable and Wireless gained 51% shares of BTC at a cost of some $220 million, with the government maintaining 49%. While there's a commitment from the new administration to regain the major share capacity into BTC, CEO Jeff Houston says these talks will resume in the weeks ahead, but will not deter BTC's commitment.
We haven't had any direct dialogue in the last few days, but we expect that dialogue will pick up over the coming weeks and months. I think it's just that, and it will be something that both shareholders, I'm sure, will sit down and have a discussion about and come up with some collaborative way forward. We're very optimistic. My job is to make sure that we at BTC and all my colleagues keep very focused in doing the jobs we need to do to service our customers and to try and remove that distraction from the day-to-day running of the business.
In fact, the change has been vast for BTC. Houston says the purchasing power of Cable and Wireless has benefited customers and the company's return to the government is up.
We came into a business which was actually on a glide path to reducing returns to government. And if we look at the dividend payments we've made to government, and both shareholders and the government in particular, even as a 49% shareholder in the business, the government is getting probably more than it was getting before as a 49% shareholder than it was as a full owner of the business. So we've been able to turn around the profitability of the business quite significantly.
The current projected returns to the government said to be in the vicinity of $28 million. To further drive telecommunications in the Bahamas, BTC has invested some $100 million into capital expenditure and will continue its upgrades.
We expect to be putting an LTE service in the market within the next 18 months. And LTE is the next evolution of 4G, and it's about 10 times faster. So again, that's going to be quite an exciting network for the Bahamas. We're looking to, we will definitely be trialling a TV product. So we've got a lot of experience, got a TV product from our other businesses we expect to bring here to the Bahamas. And at the same time, we're also rolling out a whole network of new stores. I think we've done 8 flagship stores already. We expect to get at least 14 to 15 flagship stores done by end of this year.
And the change will continue. So far, BTC has also carried out a massive restructuring exercise. Over 400 employees have left the company, but 100 new workers were hired. Houston says the goal now is to ensure competitive prices while shaping a more efficient BTC. Betty Thompson-Moss, ZNS News.
A warning going out to foreign poachers: stay away from our territory. Government leaders will deliver that message during a trip to the Dominican Republic. Shanique Miller has more.
To the invasion of Dominican fishermen, oftentimes violent against Bahamians on the open waters and fishing in ways that go against the fishing laws of the country. An even bigger threat is lurking, and it's something the government wants to ward off before it reaches a point of no return. Prime Minister Christie says it threatens the very lifeline of the Bahamas and an industry that by itself sustains many family island communities.
We have to take a very, very strong position over this issue because we are advised by their methodology used in fishing is to go down into the water and everything that moves they take. And therefore there is an implication that they are killing the fishing grounds.
Part of the response is to present to the government of the Dominican Republic this country's unflinching position The Bahamas is not open to the exploitation of Bahamian fishing industry by Dominican fishermen.
We cannot allow Dominican fishermen to continue to come into the Bahamas and denude our waters of fish.
The meeting between the two countries will take place in the Dominican Republic. Leading this diplomatic mission will be the Agriculture and Foreign Affairs ministers. Christie says the government's message has already been framed.
We also will say to them that we are prepared to take even stronger action in protecting our waters than we have in the past, whether that is legislative or by way of patrolling our waters and taking immediate action. There are options available to the country to do so. But when you think of the lifeline of the Bahamas being our supply of food, then you know how serious that is and how serious we're taking it.
The diplomatic talks will also involve discussions of mutual interest. Now, fishermen met with Agriculture and Marine Resources Minister V. Alfred Gray and top fisheries officials this week. They talked about the ongoing challenges Dominican fishermen pose. A date that's best for both governments to sit and talk is still being decided on. Shanique Miller, ZNS News.
And coming up, new developments in the Andre Brabal appeal case. Stay with us.